Hi, this is David Ruben. I am the owner of Ruben Law Firm, Maryland Bankruptcy Center. Been practicing bankruptcy law in the state of Maryland since 1991. Today, what I want to do with this video is give you an update of Chapter 13 bankruptcy in the state of Maryland. Every so often, every couple years, I'll do a new video to tell you any changes in the law or changes in the practical aspects of Chapter 13 and how our law firm is doing it and how we're handling it, because things change all the time. Now, in terms of the actual law for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, nothing has changed since the last video I did, or even since 2005. Everything has remained pretty much the same. In terms of actually doing Chapter 13s, again, we're in October 2025. There's been a lot of changes, and the changes have to do with COVID. And the reason is, during COVID, people were out of work, people were not able to pay their mortgages, and people were facing foreclosure. However, the mortgage companies, the lawyers for the mortgage companies, were not permitted under federal law, under Maryland law, to foreclose for a couple years. And even after they were permitted to foreclose, there was a lag time in actually getting the wheels turning to go after people who were not paying their mortgage. So starting in 2025, moving into 2026 and beyond for the foreseeable future, the number of foreclosures on homes in the state of Maryland has skyrocketed. And that's why you're seeing the number of Chapter 13s filed by people. So Chapter 13 is the bankruptcy, like I like to say, that we do when we can't file a Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is where we get rid of all our debts, we keep all our property, including houses, we get a fresh start, and we move on. Quicker, cheaper, better, rebuild your credit faster, better bankruptcy if we can. But many people can't do a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. There's three main reasons why people file a Chapter 13 when they can't file a Chapter 7. The first is they're facing a foreclosure. They're behind on their mortgage, and it's gotten to the point where they're not able to modify their mortgage. The mortgage company's no longer working with them, and they're either sending notice or indicating that they're going to send notice, or they already have sent notice, and there's a foreclosure date. If you have a foreclosure on your home that is scheduled or is going to be scheduled, and you just can't come up with that money to catch up on your mortgage or work something out with the mortgage company, you file a Chapter 13. A Chapter 13 automatically stops a foreclosure and allows you to take the arrearage and pay that back over 5 years. Now, there's a lot of rules that go along with that, whether or not you're able to financially afford to pay back that mortgage over 5 years, but that's what a Chapter 13 does. So when people call, and they do this on a regular basis, oh my God, I'm scared, I'm married, I have kids at home, I can't lose my home, I don't want them to be put out of their home while they're in the middle of the school year, can I stop a foreclosure? The mortgage company's telling me I can't. The answer is, yes, you can. If it's your first Chapter 13, that's good. If it's your second or third Chapter 13, you still probably can stop a foreclosure, but there are other rules that apply. That's the number one reason people file Chapter 13 in 2025, to stop a foreclosure. The second most common reason, which we're seeing more and more, is I want to file a Chapter 7 and get rid of all my debt. I'm not behind on my mortgage. I want to keep my house. Can I file a Chapter 7? And I'm going to ask you on the phone, well, how much equity do you have in your house? People say, why does it matter how much equity I have in my house? I can keep my home anyway, can I? Yes, you can always keep your home, but it just depends on whether or not you can file a Chapter 7 or file a Chapter 13. Here's why, and this is really important, and I think when I explain this to people on the phone, they really understand it. And it's kind of a difficult concept to understand unless you really have been doing this for quite a long time, or if you're not speaking to an attorney who's willing to, speak to you in common person terms and respect that you really don't know the situation and you're nervous about it, it's really hard to understand. But this is the best way I can explain the second reason why people file a Chapter 13. If you have the ability to sell property, and people say, I don't want to sell my property, I'm not including my home. I say, no, it's not about that. You're not going to sell your home. But if you have the theoretical ability to sell your home and pay off your debts, or pay off a portion of your debts after you've paid the mortgage, then you can't file a Chapter 7, because Chapter 7 is for people who have no ability to pay off their debts. Chapter 13 is for people who have the ability to pay off their debts, but they can't afford to pay all their bills on a monthly basis. I've got $200,000 in equity in my home, but I've got $80,000 in credit card debt, and I can't afford the minimum payments of $2,500 a month with interest rates of 20%. I'll never get out of this mess. What can I do? Well, you can't file Chapter 7 because you have a lot of equity in your home, but you can take that $80,000 and you can pay that off over 5 years. Now, you have to show that you can afford it. You may not have to pay the full $80,000. It depends on how much equity you have in your home. When you call any bankruptcy firm, and the first thing we say to you is, how much equity do you have in your home? That's why we're asking. That's the second reason. So Chapter 13, not because you're behind on your mortgage, but because you want to manage your credit card debt, your personal loans. You're going to stop a wage garnishment, stop a bank attachment, those kind of things, and you're going to pay it off over 5 years without interest. I can't stress that enough. Without interest. That's what a Chapter 13 is for. The third reason people file Chapter 13, and this is happening more often than it used to as well, because people's incomes generally are going a little bit higher, is we have something called a means test. Chapter 7, we don't make a lot of money, we don't have a lot of property, we wipe out all our debt. Chapter 13, I make too much money. What does that mean? We have something called a means test. Right now, as of October 2025, for example, if you're a one-person household and you make more than $82,000 a year, you presumptively cannot file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Why? Because the bankruptcy laws and the bankruptcy court and the trustees saying, well, I know you have debt, but you make pretty good money, and there's only one person in your household, so we think you can afford to pay something back. Now, it might only be $100 a month, $300 a month, $400 a month, and that'll be really good to do that in a Chapter 13, but we're not going to let you do a Chapter 7 and wipe out all your debt. Now, with a household of 2, you can make a combined income of $109,000. Household of 3, $128,000. So even if you make a substantial income, you still may be qualified to file a Chapter 7. But there are circumstances, and this is the third reason to file a Chapter 13, that you can't do a 7. You're going to do a payment plan. You're going to pay a small amount of money back over a period of time, no interest, and you're going to get huge debt relief in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So that's reason number 3. If you have any questions about Chapter 13 bankruptcy, feel free to call us anytime. You can send us an email through our contact form. You can call us 24/7. You can schedule an appointment to come in. Every consultation initially is free, and we'll be happy to help you.